Should the death tax die? A battle is taking place on Capitol Hill, and just a short time ago, the House voting to repeal the estate tax. This impacts you, big or small. Your inheritance could be on the line. And do you really want to hand your family's hard-earned money right over to the government when you die? Sorry to be a bummer, but in a recent Fox News poll, an overwhelming majority, look at this number, 71%, all people think the estate tax is unfair. And joining us to sort this out, our political panel this evening, the Wall Street Journal's John Bussey and the National Review's Jillian Melchior. Thank you so much, guys.
Pleasure.
First to you, John. So does a repeal of the estate tax have a shot at happening? Please tell me yes.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
So it's not going to, and I'm not sure, this is a little bit of politics right at tax time. It's not going to get through the Senate. If it were to get through the Senate, the president's already said he's going to veto it. But what's really interesting is that 71% of people who say, hey, it's unfair, there's a separate poll by the Pew Research Group that says 60% of people say, hey, the rich don't pay enough taxes as it is.
Okay.
And if you were to be asked, Kimberly, what percentage of people in the United States, percentage of estates actually get affected by this tax, what would you guess?
I don't know.
Two-tenths of 1%.
Of 1%.
It's a
small amount.
Tiny number.
Okay, well, that was me. I'm in the tiny, unfortunate number. I think it's what's hard for families and people is that you're suffering, you have tremendous loss in your family, you lose a loved one, and then you get hit by the government, and it's just pouring pounds of salt on an open wound, and it's tough because you know your loved ones, they work so hard. People say you can't take it with you. Well, the government's going to take it when you die. That's for sure. Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I think they'll take it for you. I mean, these are assets that have already been taxed. And I think what's so devastating about this, I grew up in Wyoming, so we've got a lot of ranchers, a lot of farm country. And they're the ones that really get hammered by this. It's still a very small percentage, but you've got a lot. Well, a lot of their assets are tied up in land, and the value of land often goes up. It's also tied up in expensive farm equipment.
True.
And so I've talked to people who've had farms that have been in their families for generations. I remember one who was a fifth-generation farmer who was just terrified that the estate tax would mean that she couldn't pass her ranch on or her farm on to her little grandson. That's devastating.
It is very devastating. This is such a good example because people don't think about it. Right, land with appreciation and values. Perhaps when they bought it, it was not worth very much. Now, if it's been in a family for a long time, it's worth a significant amount of money. And like you said, farming equipment, to the point where is a family even going to be able to continue in the family business because they are being penalized, John?
Well, all the things that Congress could be focusing its attention on, immigration, real tax reform, corporate tax reform, education, right now, the way it stands, and the state would have to reach a level of almost $11 million for it to be subject to the estate tax. It's hard to kind of work up a tremendous amount of passion, even though Jillian's absolutely right. This affects people who are farmers.
Sure.
It affects
they
a lot of
small
business people. That have built up a business and want to pass it along to their
Isn't
that
kids. Part of the American dream, right?
Well,
you work so hard. I want to hand something over. If I've been working the land and the farm and the soil and raising crops or corn or anything like that with my family, I want to hand it on to my my children to be able to do it. Why are we penalizing
That's true, and I think it's a very viscerally felt argument that everybody would agree with, right? It's ours. We want to pass it on to our kids. Yeah. The flip side of that is also a social compact issue here, which is, do you allow wealthy families to empower themselves over generations geometrically without any kind of tax leveling the playing field?
I will say
that's like a redistribution. It sounds more like socialism to me because the idea is supposed to be work hard.
It's called progressive taxation.
I'm not into that. That's a dirty word. I'm covering my ears,
On top of that, we've got generational wealth being passed on through inheritance is a great tool for pulling people up into the middle class. But if you look at the richest, that's a really volatile list. A lot of it's earned income. A lot of it's people who are being tossed up, buffeted by the market. That's a lot of the reason that when you look at the Forbes list of wealthiest people, not the same people on it year after year. I think this is a great tool for the middle class, necessarily something that really affects income inequality.
That's why you get to the bottom, get to the facts. Well, you guys have been a fantastic panel. Thank you. Many thanks.